The flickering fluorescent lights of the security office hummed, my only company on another quiet night shift. My job was simple: watch the monitors, do my rounds, and make sure the old Crestwood Mall stayed empty until morning. Usually, it was mind-numbingly dull. But tonight was different. It started around 2 a.m. I was sipping lukewarm coffee, my eyes glazing over the grid of black and white screens. Then, on camera 4, the one pointing down the main concourse, I saw something. A woman in a long, dark coat was walking slowly past the shuttered storefronts. Strange, the mall was locked up tight. I rewound the footage. Nothing, just an empty hallway. I must have been dozing off. But then it happened again. Camera 7, the food court. A janitor's cart trundled into view, a yellow bucket sloshing water onto the tiles. I watched for a full minute as the unseen janitor mopped the floor. I knew for a fact our cleaning crew left at 10 p.m. I grabbed my keys, my heart starting to thud against my ribs. I had to check this out. The food court was silent and dry, not a drop of water on the checkered floor. No cart, no bucket, nothing, just the eerie echoes of my own footsteps. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. Back in the office, I stared at the monitors, my knuckles white as I gripped the edge of the desk. Then, camera 2, the entrance to the old department store, flickered. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8, appeared. He was bouncing a red ball, the rhythmic thud, 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 almost audible through the silence of my office. He stopped, looked directly into the camera, and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was wide, stretched, and unnatural. Then he dropped the ball and ran into the darkness of the store. I didn't move. My blood ran cold. I knew what was coming. I was just the audience. A few minutes later, the live feed for camera 2 showed the exact same thing. The little boy, the red ball, the terrifying smile. It wasn't a recording. The cameras were showing me the future. My breath hitched in my throat as my eyes darted to camera 11, the one trained on the service corridor right behind my office. On the screen, the door to the security room creaked open. A tall, slender figure, impossibly long and draped in shadows, stooped to enter. Its head turned, its face a pale, featureless oval, and it looked right at the in-office camera, the one just above my head. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I was frozen, watching the monitor, watching the future unfold. Behind me, I heard a sound. A slow, deliberate creak as the doorknob to my office began to turn. The monitor showed the figure stepping fully inside, its shadowy form filling the small room on the screen. It was happening now. It was here. I stared at the screen, at the ghostly image of myself, back turned to the door, just as the shadow figure reached out a long, spindly hand towards my shoulder. I didn't dare turn around. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. See you in the shadows. Have you ever heard of the Blackwood Manor? It's one of those old, grand hotels that look like they've been pulled straight out of a history book. But behind its elegant facade lies a chilling secret, a secret contained within the 4 walls of room 113. They say anyone who spends the night in that room is never seen again. No struggle, no screams, just gone, and the strangest part. The next morning, housekeeping always finds the room perfectly pristine. The bed is made, the towels are folded, and there's not a single sign that anyone was ever there. The legend began decades ago with a traveling salesman named Arthur Penwright. He was the first. He checked in, jovial and full of life, and requested a quiet room. The receptionist, a young woman new to the job, gave him the key to 113. The next day, he missed his checkout time. When staff entered the room, it was empty. His luggage, his clothes, everything had vanished along with him. The police were called, but they found nothing. They concluded he simply left, but the staff knew better. They knew the room was exactly as it had been before he arrived. Over the years, the pattern repeated. A honeymooning couple, a lone backpacker, a writer seeking solitude. Each one checked into room 113, and each one disappeared by dawn. The hotel tried everything. They changed the lock, blessed the room, even boarded it up for a while. But the disappearances continued. Desperate, the management started leaving a small, hidden camera in the room, hoping to finally capture what was happening. But every morning, the camera was gone too, vanished along with the guest. One night, a skeptical journalist named Clara decided to debunk the myth once and for all. She was determined to spend the night and emerge the next morning to write and expose on the hotel's elaborate hoax. She checked in, armed with her own recording equipment and a live streaming device connected to her editor's laptop. As she settled in, she described the room to her viewers. It was ordinary, almost disappointingly so. An old four-poster bed, a heavy oak wardrobe, and a single unsettling painting of a calm sea on the wall. As the hours ticked by, nothing happened. Clara grew bored, even a little smug. Around 3 a.m., she started feeling drowsy. Her eyelids felt like lead. She fought it, but the pull of sleep was overwhelming. Her last words on the live stream were, "It's just a very comfortable bed." Then, silence. Her editor watched, his heart pounding, as the screen showed Clara falling into a deep sleep. And then, something truly bizarre happened. The bedsheets began to move on their own. Slowly, methodically, the sheets and blankets began to fold themselves over Clara's sleeping form, tucking her in tighter and tighter, like a patient parent. Then the pillows fluffed themselves up around her head. The whole bed seemed to absorb her. The mattress dipped, and for a moment, her shape was visible beneath the covers, and then it smoothed out, becoming perfectly flat. The live feed fizzled and died. The next morning, when the hotel manager unlocked the door, room 113 was spotless. The bed was perfectly made. Clara was gone. The only thing left was on the wall. The painting of the sea wasn't calm anymore. Now, a tiny, distant figure could be seen struggling in the waves, a figure that looked unnervingly like Clara. The room wasn't haunted. It was hungry, and it was very, very tidy. The rain was coming down in sheets, the kind that makes your windshield wipers scream in protest. I was on a late-night drive, cutting through some forgotten backwoods road to save time. Big mistake. The darkness out here was absolute, broken only by my headlights carving a tunnel through the downpour. That's when I first saw him. He was just standing on the shoulder, drenched with no car in sight. As I got closer, my headlights illuminated him. He was a tall, thin man in a dated-looking suit, and he was smiling. Not a friendly smile, but a wide, unnatural grin that stretched his face a little too far. It was unsettling, but I figured he was just some poor guy whose car had broken down. I kept driving. About 10 minutes later, my heart nearly stopped. Up ahead, on the side of the road, stood the same man. Same suit, same slicked back hair, same impossibly wide smile. My mind raced. How could he have gotten ahead of me? There were no intersecting roads. I pushed the gas pedal a little harder, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The smiling man just stood there, his head slowly turning to follow my car as I sped past. I was genuinely scared now. I checked my GPS. Still another 40 miles of this forsaken road. I decided to floor it. The engine roared, the tires spit gravel and water, and the trees became a blurry wall on either side. I didn't care. I just needed to put as much distance as possible between me and him. After what felt like an eternity of high-speed driving, I risked a glance at my rearview mirror. It was empty. A wave of relief washed over me. Maybe I had imagined it. The stress of the long drive, the rain, the darkness, it was all getting to me. I eased my foot off the accelerator, letting the car coast back to a more sensible speed, and then I saw the flicker of a figure in my headlights, way up the road. No, it couldn't be. But as I drew closer, the horrifying reality set in. It was him. Standing in the exact same spot, in the exact same pose, with that same grotesque smile plastered on his face. This time, as I approached, he did something different. He slowly, deliberately raised one hand and gave me a little wave. I snapped. I swerved the car violently, tires screeching as I made a U-turn across the wet asphalt. I wasn't going forward anymore. I'd go back, find another route. I didn't care. I just had to get away. I raced back in the direction I came from, my eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror, expecting to see him chasing me. But there was nothing, just the empty, rain-slicked road behind me. I drove for 15 minutes, maybe 20, my panic slowly subsiding into a shaky resolve. I was almost back to the main highway. I could see the glow of civilization on the horizon. I allowed myself a small, trembling breath of relief, just a little farther. Then my headlights caught something. Standing under the dim glow of the very first streetlight at the edge of town, waiting for me, it was the man in the suit. His smile seemed even wider now, a triumphant, predatory grin that promised there was no escape. He was no longer on the side of the road. He was standing right in the middle of it. I slammed on the brakes, the car hydroplaning into a spin. The last thing I saw before everything went black was that smiling face filling my entire windshield. The storm hit us without warning, a furious assault of wind and rain that turned the forest trail into a river of mud. There were 4 of us, me, Liam, Chloe, and Ben. Soaked and shivering, we stumbled upon it like a miracle, a small, dark cabin nestled deep among the ancient trees. The door was unlocked. It seemed too good to be true, but at that point, we didn't care. We just needed to get out of the storm. Inside, it was musty and cold, filled with the scent of damp wood and decay. There was a single room, sparsely furnished with a rickety table, a few chairs, and a stone fireplace. Liam managed to get a fire going, its flickering light pushing back the oppressive darkness and casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. We huddled around it, the warmth slowly seeping back into our bones. For a while, the only sounds were the crackling fire and the storm raging outside. It felt safe. It felt like we'd been saved. That feeling didn't last. It was Chloe who noticed it first. She was staring at the far wall, her eyes wide. "Guys," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Look at the wall." We all turned. At first, I saw nothing, just the rough-hewn wooden planks. But then I saw it, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement. The wall seemed to swell outward, just a fraction of an inch, before slowly receding. It was like watching something breathe. "It's just the wind," Ben said, trying to sound confident, but his voice wavered. "The storm is shaking the whole cabin, but we all knew it wasn't the wind." The movement was too slow, too rhythmic, too organic. We watched, mesmerized and terrified, as the wall continued its gentle, horrifying pulsation. In and out, in and out. It was like we were inside the chest cavity of some colossal, sleeping creature. The air grew thick, heavy. The steady rhythm of the walls became a sound, a low, deep thrum that resonated in our bones. It was the sound of a slow, massive heartbeat. Thump-thump. Thump-thump. The fire in the hearth began to dim, its flame shrinking as if starved of air each time the walls contracted. With every expansion, a foul, earthy smell like freshly turned soil and something rotting wafted into the room. Panic started to set in. Liam scrambled for the door, yanking on the handle. It wouldn't budge. It stuck, he yelled, his voice cracking. We all rushed to help, pulling and pushing with all our strength, but it was like trying to move a mountain. We were trapped. The rhythmic contracting of the cabin seemed to intensify, the walls moving more visibly now. The space felt smaller, more claustrophobic with each breath the cabin took. The wooden planks of the walls began to groan and creak, not like old wood settling, but like sinews stretching. A dark, sticky sap started to ooze from the seams between the logs, dripping down in thick, black rivulets. Ben touched it, then recoiled, his hand covered in the foul-smelling substance. "It's like blood," he stammered. The house was alive, and it was waking up. The floorboards beneath our feet began to shift, to rise and fall in sync with the walls. We were standing on the diaphragm of this wooden beast. The single window, which had been our only view of the storm outside, was now dark. Not just dark from the night, but black as if an eyelid had slowly closed over it. The heartbeat grew louder, faster. Thump, 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 thump. It was no longer sleeping, it was awake, and we were inside it. The walls began to close in, not just pulsing, but truly shrinking the room. The ceiling lowered, the floor rose. The furniture splintered and collapsed under the immense pressure. We were being crushed, digested. Our screams were swallowed by the deafening heartbeat of the cabin. The last thing I saw was the fireplace, the dying embers looking like the baleful red eye of the creature that had lured us in from the storm. The darkness that followed wasn't just the absence of light. It was the final, suffocating embrace of the thing that lived in the woods, the thing we had mistaken for a sanctuary. And as it finished its meal, the storm outside finally began to quiet down, leaving the forest in a deep, unsettling silence. The flickering neon sign of the Starlight Gas and Go was my only companion during those long, lonely night shifts. It was my first job out of high school, a graveyard shift at a station so far off the main highway it felt like an outpost on another planet. The old man who hired me, a guy named Silas with skin like worn leather, had only one rule. He pointed a crooked finger towards the back of the building. Don't matter what you hear, what you think you see, you don't ever go behind the station. You got me. I nodded, figuring he was just worried about me slacking off. The first few weeks were uneventful. The silence was the worst part, a thick, heavy blanket broken only by the hum of the coolers, and the occasional trucker rumbling in for coffee. Then, things started to get weird. It began with whispers, faint sounds carried on the wind that I'd dismiss as the rustling of leaves or the creak of the old building. But one night, it was unmistakable. A voice, clear as day, called my name. Leo. It was a soft, feminine voice, and it was coming from directly behind the station. I froze, my hand hovering over the cash register. My heart hammered against my ribs. Silas's warning echoed in my mind. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to exhaustion. But it came again, a little louder this time. Leo, come here. It sounded sad, lost. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, to lock the doors and wait for the sun to rise. But curiosity is a powerful, dangerous thing. I grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight from under the counter, its beam cutting a nervous path through the dimly lit store. I crept to the back door, my hand shaking as I turned the deadbolt. The air outside was cold, much colder than it should have been for a summer night. The voice was clearer out here. Leo, please. It was so full of sorrow, it pulled at something inside me. I took a hesitant step onto the cracked asphalt behind the building. The area was cluttered with old tires, rusted oil drums, and overgrown weeds. My flashlight beam danced across the mess, revealing nothing. Hello, I called out, my voice trembling. Is someone there? For a moment, there was only silence. I was about to turn back, to dismiss it as a prank or my own tired mind playing tricks. Then, from the deepest shadows near the back wall, the voice whispered again, this time right beside my ear. I've been waiting for you. A cold dread, colder than the night air, washed over me. I spun around, swinging the flashlight wildly. The beam landed on a shape huddled against the wall. It wasn't human. It was tall and gaunt, its limbs too long, its skin pale and stretched tight over its bones. But the face was what broke me. It was a twisted, nightmarish mockery of a human face with wide, dark eyes that held no light, only an endless, consuming hunger. It smiled, a jagged gash in its face, and I saw that it had my mother's eyes. It raised a long, spindly arm and pointed not at me, but back towards the open door of the gas station. Silas was right, it rasped, its voice now a dry, crackling sound, no longer soft or sad. You never should have come out here. Now who will watch the store? I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just stood there, frozen, as the figure unfolded itself and began to walk slowly, deliberately, towards the light of the gas station, leaving me alone in the darkness behind the building.